Right, so we will start the demo of WebAnalyst by first logging in as a user named Emma. And in this page, we can see the set of projects that Emma can connect to. Some of them are offline, like the plants, and our user Emma can also have different roles on different projects. She can be either a reader or a writer. Each user can customize their account, password, or even the theme. Now, let's open the discount travel example. Okay. This page here shows the WebAnalyst dashboard for the current project. The daily project activity shows the number of connections in orange and the number of daily modifications in blue. The project activity log presents daily, weekly, or even monthly curves. It can show that some weeks there are many connections to the project, but very few modifications. Right below that, there's a chart showing the distribution of the different kinds of elements managed by WebAnalyst: dictionary and terms, goals, business rules, requirements, and risks. In the top right-hand corner lies the project timeline, which shows the events that occurred during the life of the project, which are versions and documents. Below that, we have a list of all the documents recently produced by WebAnalyst and the possibility to visualize or download them. For example, we can visualize here the page that describes the goals defined in WebAnalyst. Now in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see the list of current connected users. In this current project, I'll be a writer. This means I can edit its content by clicking on the bottom left-hand button. In the edition box, there is an explorer on the left that shows the concepts which can be edited in WebAnalyst. If I click on one of the folders, it displays a spreadsheet with all the elements of the folder, which can be risks, business rules, two kinds of requirements, which is business and information system, but also goals and terms. I'm going to add a new term to the dictionary, and it appears at the bottom of the table. Now let's define the VAT rate. The small pencil in the cell is used to open an edition box to enter the term's definition. The other columns depend on the type of the element and correspond to properties which are defined in Modelio. For my project, I need to add new requirements in a new folder, which we called performance requirements. I can specify the type of requirements to be created in this folder, and also in order to define specific properties for its requirements. In the second part, I can define values to initialize the properties of each performance requirement. Now the table opens, and I can start adding new requirements. By clicking on the plus button, I can add a new requirement, which I will name response time. And then I can define that requirement, or say that the system has to respond in less than 5 seconds, for example. Here we go. Now let's add a new requirement. It will be number of connections. If you'd rather work with forms, you can just click on the pencil button at the far right of the table. This will give you a wider view of the requirements. And Now I can type the definition of this requirement, which will be that the number of simultaneous connections must be 1000. Okay. In this mode, you can see that you can browse through the different requirements simply by clicking on the arrows on the top right-hand corner. The data synchronization between users is done in real time. Let's open a new browser. And then connect to the same project, but this time with a different account. I open the project. Edit its contents. And you can see that the requirements created by the first user are available here. One of the users add a cost to a requirement, for example, and without any other action, the cost is updated for the other user. Here we are. Now, if I modify the risk for the user which is below, and the above user sees the risk value, he will see it being updated. This also works when folders are added or modified, or when requirements themselves are added or modified. With WebAnalyst, requirements can be exported to Excel and then re-imported. I'll modify my requirements in Excel, so I can export the whole set of requirements, and then the Excel document is generated and downloaded. If I edit the Excel table, you can see that the content is the same as my WebAnalyst project. I'm going to add a new requirement, which will be number of CPUs, and define it as number of CPUs must be sufficient to manage all the requests. And I'll also define a few properties for this requirement. Okay. Now, to retrieve the requirements modified in Excel, I just need to click on the Import button and select the Excel file to import. The project from which I run the import is updated, and so are all the other projects, as you can see below. Now, WebAnalyst also offers a document production feature. The portal displays the reference documents. Here we go. So this is the portal who displays the reference documents, and you can here visualize or download the documents produced by the users. The documents are identified for a given version. In this example, I have two versions, 1.0 and 1.1. You can also visualize all the archives, whatever versions they're from, and filter them to find a specific document you're looking for. Okay. The documents listed here have been defined in the project by one user using Modelio. Those documents can be in various formats: Word, HTML, or OpenOffice. I can produce a document as a draft or under an identified version, which will be used as a reference for the project. The documents can be produced locally or directly in the portal so other users can access them. For example, if I produce a new dictionary on the portal, a few seconds later, the documents appear at the bottom and I can visualize it. You can see that the VAT rate requirements that we defined previously is here in a few moments. There it is. That's the new requirement. Finally, a user can visualize all the versions of the project and the associated documents. Now, an administrator has access to more functionalities. Now let's connect as another user, like Tony, who has an admin account. First, the WebAnalyst administrator can configure a project. He can define the project description, force the project offline by unchecking the online box, or define which users will have access to the project as readers or writers. For example, if I add a user, Steve, as reader of the project, I'll do it here. This user will be able to connect to the project, but he won't be able to modify it. The administrator can freeze a version and automatically produce the associated documents, which will be the reference documents. For example, I can define here a version 2.0. and produce the associated documents. Now, one of the exclusive features of WebAnalyst is that it can connect to the same repository as Modelio. With Modelio, I'll be able to see other parts of the repository. So I start Modelio. Like in WebAnalyst, the user can identify himself and connect to the same discount travel project. As you can see, this user can connect to other projects which are not necessarily accessible to WebAnalyst. Now, the whole repository will be downloaded locally and configured by Modelio. Depending on the size of the project, this can take a few minutes. Of course, this will only have to be done once, and any future connection will be a lot faster. It's now installing all the modules needed for the project. And here we are. So you can visualize the elements that were created in WebAnalyst, the performance requirements with the response time that we created earlier. And all the elements are also displayed either in a table or in forms. An Excel import-export feature is also available. One of the interesting features is the possibility to create a graphic representation of the different elements. I will now create a requirements diagram in which I can show the elements created in WebAnalyst. Setting the diagrams here. So the point here is that I'm able to connect my requirements to an application component defined in other parts of the repository. Now let's look for the application that lets a customer select a trip. Which is called time reservation site, so we can connect it to our requirements. I show that application in the links editor below, and then drag and drop the 3 requirements. And I'll get traceability links which specify that the application satisfies the requirements. The link editor of Modelio can be used to make an impact analysis. If the requirement changes in a future version, then we'll be able to know what the impact will be on the whole information system. Now, in the Web Analyst table for the performance requirements, we had default columns that corresponded to specific properties. I'm now going to create new properties. So let's create 2, for examples. I'll first create a property table definition in which I can create a first property named creation date for Modelio and WebAnalyst to propose a calendar. I'll specify this property as a date. Now I'll create a second one named comprehensive. For it to be a checkbox, I need to set it as a Boolean with 2 values, true and false, obviously. I'll now be able to use those new properties by linking them to the requirements folder. If I edit the table, you see that I can now define a requirements date of creation and check the comprehensive box. Okay. Modelio also offers the possibility to define new documents to be used either in Modelio or in WebAnalyst. You can see here documents we have seen earlier in WebAnalyst. And I will add a Word document to generate the performance requirements. Now I need to enter the document's properties. A name, a template that will extract the requirements, a title, author, and so on. And eventually, the document has to generate the container containing the performance requirements. Now, to generate the physical document, I just need to click on the Generation button in the Document Publisher's toolbar. This opens the document, and all the data held in the Modelio repository is generated. The diagram, the 3 requirements, and their properties. And just like we did with Excel, it is also possible to import a Word document. For example, I change the response time to 1 second and save the document. Then I go back to Modelio to launch the import. I get a report showing the modifications made in the Modelio repository. And we can see them now in the Modelio spreadsheet. Now, unlike WebAnalyst, all the modifications done in Modelio are made locally. If the user wants to share them, he must commit them in the shared repository. A comment can even be added to explain the changes. And this is the SVN commit being done. Okay. Now let's go back to WebAnalyst to see the changes. If I visualize the performance requirements, now I need to sign in again. And go to the project edition. Now if I visualize my requirements, I can see the same properties as in Modelio, a creation date and a new checkbox. In the documents list, we can now see the document created in Modelio, which will allow the WebAnalyst users to produce a document describing the performance requirements. Now this was a preview of the features of WebAnalyst and its interactions with Modelio.